This is the most populous city in the United States. It is also home to a lot of rats, about 3 million of them.
For the first 7 months of 2026, New York City's Department of Sanitation recorded roughly 22% fewer rat sightings reported to the city's 311 hotline compared to the same period the year before, putting the city on track for its lowest annual rat sighting total since before the pandemic. In a city whose relationship with rats has become practically a cultural signature, complete with viral videos of rodents dragging pizza slices down subway stairs, a genuine, sustained decline of this size is not a small thing. Sanitation Commissioner Gregory Anderson had a blunt answer when reporters asked what was behind it. Containerization is the reason, he said, not a predator, a trash can. Before we get into how that happened, if you're into real, deeply researched nature stories like this one, hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe now so you don't miss the next one. To understand why a change in trash collection could move a rat population this dramatically, you have to understand what New York streets looked like to a rat before the change began. For decades, the standard method for putting out both residential and commercial garbage in the city was to leave it in black plastic bags directly on the curb, often for hours before scheduled pickup, sometimes overnight. To a rat, an animal whose entire biology is built around finding calorie-dense food quickly and reproducing just as fast, a curb lined with loosely bagged trash functioned as an open buffet, restocked daily across nearly every block in the 5 boroughs. The reproductive biology behind New York's rat population helps explain why containerization needed to work at the scale it did to actually move the needle. A single female brown rat, the species dominant throughout the city, can produce a litter of 6 to 12 pups roughly every 3 weeks under favorable conditions, reaching sexual maturity herself in as little as 5 weeks. Under ideal food and shelter availability, a single breeding pair's descendants can theoretically number in the hundreds within a single year. That reproductive speed means a population suppressed only partially through sporadic poisoning or occasional trapping in isolated hotspots can rebound to its previous size within months once the underlying food supply remains intact. Citywide, coordinated removal of that food supply, rather than piecemeal predator or poison-based control efforts targeting individual blocks, was necessary specifically because anything less left enough surviving breeding pairs and enough available food to simply refill whatever gap earlier efforts had created. In 2022, the city administration under then-Mayor Eric Adams launched what officials began calling the trash revolution, a multi-year effort to fundamentally change how that garbage sat on New York streets. The first phase pushed back permitted set-out times from as early as 4 in the afternoon to 8 at night, cutting the number of hours trash bags sat exposed and accessible before collection. Officials also restructured Sanitation Department pickup schedules, shifting a much larger share of collection to overnight hours rather than the traditional early morning start, further shrinking the daily window during which loose garbage sat waiting on the curb. The more consequential shift came next: mandatory containerization, requiring trash to go into secure, lidded bins rather than bags a rat could simply chew through. Food-related businesses, restaurants, delis, bodegas, grocery stores, and bars, the kind of commercial operations that generate an outsized share of the garbage rats actually find worth eating, were required to containerize first in 2023. Residential buildings followed on a rolling schedule based on size, with smaller buildings of 9 units or fewer required to comply starting in November of 2024. For larger apartment buildings and entire dense residential districts, the city began installing large on-street communal bins nicknamed Empire bins, engineered specifically to be too heavy and too well sealed for a rat to break into. The scale of New York's daily garbage output puts the containerization effort in useful perspective. The city generates roughly 44 million pounds of trash every single day across residential and commercial sources combined, a volume that, before the trash revolution began, sat largely in loose bags along curbs for hours at a stretch. Commercial food-related businesses alone, restaurants, delis, grocery stores, caterers, and bars were estimated to produce around 20 million pounds of that daily total, just under half the citywide figure, which is part of why officials targeted commercial containerization first in 2023, ahead of the slower building-by-building rollout of residential requirements that followed. Getting even a fraction of that volume into secure containers represented a logistical undertaking on a scale few American cities have attempted, requiring new fleets of specialized side-loading collection trucks, new bin manufacturing and distribution contracts, and, in some neighborhoods, the conversion of on-street parking spaces into space for the large communal Empire bins now serving high-density residential blocks. The results showed up in the data almost immediately and grew more pronounced as containerization expanded neighborhood by neighborhood. An early pilot program in Hamilton Heights, one of the first residential areas to receive full containerization, recorded a 55% drop in reported rat sightings compared to the period before the bins arrived. West Harlem, another early adopter, saw sightings fall 68% in its fully containerized zone, according to figures cited by City Council member Sean Abreu. By late 2025, rat sightings had declined for 12 consecutive months compared to the same month a year earlier, and by mid-2026, one neighborhood with trash fully containerized since June of the previous year reported a 34% drop in sightings over just the first 7 months of the year. The underlying mechanism officials point to is straightforward, if unglamorous, compared to a dramatic new predator moving in. Kathleen Karate, the city's first citywide director of rodent mitigation, appointed in 2023 and known informally as the Rat Czar, before stepping down from the role in 2025, described the strategy in blunt, almost military terms during her tenure. The goal was to put the city's rats on what officials called a historically aggressive fasting diet, systematically removing the food sources that had let the population grow so large and so visible in the first place. Sanitation Commissioner Jessica Tisch, who oversaw much of the containerization rollout, put it even more simply in a later interview. "Trash is the single biggest source of rats," she said, "and getting food waste out of loose black bags and into containers is the single most effective thing the city can do to fight them." None of this means natural predators are absent from the story entirely, and New York's urban wildlife population genuinely has grown more diverse and more visible in recent years. Red-tailed hawks now nest at more than 20 confirmed sites across Manhattan alone, up from just 8 in 2010, taking advantage of improved park habitat, denser tree canopy, and cleaner water to establish territories throughout the city's green spaces, where rats and other small mammals make up the bulk of what they hunt. Eastern coyotes, first documented establishing breeding pairs in Bronx parks in the 2000s, have since been spotted as far south as Manhattan and Staten Island, opportunistic hunters capable of covering up to 10 miles of open space in a single night in search of whatever food is available, rats very much included. Great horned owls, raccoons, and even a small established opossum population, descended from animals that first expanded into the city roughly a century ago, round out a predator community that genuinely does eat rats whenever the opportunity arises. Coyotes present a particularly interesting case study in how urban predators can theoretically reshape a city's broader wildlife balance, even without direct evidence yet connecting them specifically to New York's rat decline. Research conducted in Chicago, where coyotes established a far larger and more thoroughly studied urban population years before New York's own coyotes arrived, found that the animals measurably suppressed local populations of foxes, raccoons, skunks, and feral cats simply by competing with and occasionally preying on them, an effect that in turn allowed ground-nesting bird populations to recover in areas coyotes had colonized. Wildlife researchers studying that Chicago pattern have speculated that even a fraction of the same effect, if it eventually takes hold in New York as the city's coyote population continues to grow and establish more permanent territory, could meaningfully contribute to rodent control over the coming years, offering a more natural complement to the city's ongoing containerization efforts, though no research to date has confirmed that New York's still small and still establishing coyote population has reached anywhere near the scale needed to produce a comparable citywide effect. What the data does not currently support is the idea that this predator community is driving the specific, sharp decline the city has documented since 2023. Officials tracking the numbers have attributed the drop specifically and repeatedly to containerization timing and geography, sightings falling fastest and furthest in exactly the neighborhoods where secure trash bins had just been installed, not in a pattern that tracks with hawk nesting sites, coyote territories, or any other predator's range. Wildlife biologists studying the city's hawks have separately noted that the bird's own population boom appears linked more directly to improved park habitat and denser tree cover than to any specific surge in prey availability, complicating any simple story where more rats fed more hawks, and more hawks then reversed the rat boom in turn. Not every neighborhood has experienced the decline evenly, and residents in some of the city's historically hardest-hit areas remain openly skeptical that the citywide numbers reflect what they see on their own blocks. In Harlem, one resident who became briefly notable in 2023 for describing rats the size of crocs running through her neighborhood told reporters roughly a year later that she had noticed more rat burrows opening up in areas that previously had none, interpreting the pattern as displacement rather than reduction. Rats pushed out of newly containerized blocks and relocating to nearby areas that had not yet received the same treatment. City officials have generally acknowledged this dynamic as a real possibility during the rollout's early, uneven phase. One reason the Sanitation Department has continued pushing to expand containerization coverage as quickly as new bin manufacturing and truck fleet capacity allow, rather than declaring victory in the neighborhoods that adopted it first while leaving other areas exposed to whatever displaced population those early successes generated. There's also a genuine complication working against any predator taking meaningful credit for the decline: rodenticide. New York City's own Parks Department and public health officials have documented numerous red-tailed hawks and great horned owls dying from secondary anticoagulant poisoning, a toxic buildup that happens when a predator eats a rat or mouse that had itself ingested rat poison. Central Park's well-known resident owl, nicknamed Barry, was confirmed through necropsy to have been poisoned this way before later being struck and killed by a maintenance vehicle. That same poison, deployed widely across the city specifically to kill rats, works directly against the very predators that might otherwise be doing the job naturally, meaning the city's own rat control tools have, at times, actively undermined the wildlife capable of contributing to the fight. Beyond containerization, the city has layered on a range of additional, more targeted tactics as part of the same broader mitigation strategy. Officials have designated specific rat mitigation zones in areas with historically high complaint volumes, including sections of the Bronx's Grand Concourse Corridor, Harlem, Bedford-Stuyvesant, Bushwick, and the East Village, directing extra cleanup resources, community education events, and enforcement action specifically toward those blocks. In 2025, the Sanitation Department expanded its tactics underground as well, investing in teams that pump carbon monoxide directly into rat burrows found beneath the city's roughly 600,000 street tree beds, a targeted extermination method piloted first on the Upper East Side after officials determined tree pits had become one of the more common places rats were establishing dens close to accessible food sources. None of these more targeted programs approach the scale of the citywide containerization effort, but officials have described them as necessary complements, addressing pockets of the population that even a well-executed food removal strategy takes time to fully reach. Several years of data now point toward a stubbornly simple mechanism behind the decline, one that took years of political will and infrastructure investment to actually implement. An animal this dependent on human garbage for food declines reliably once that garbage becomes hard enough to reach, whether or not any hawk happens to be circling overhead at the time. New York's rat population has not been hunted into decline by some new predator moving into the city. It has been put on a very long, very deliberate diet, one sealed trash bin at a time. The politics surrounding the containerization push have not been entirely smooth either, a detail worth including for a complete picture. The program has required the city to remove a small but politically sensitive share of on-street parking spaces to accommodate the large empire bins in dense residential districts, drawing pushback in some neighborhoods even as sightings data in those same areas trended favorably. Leadership turnover has added further uncertainty. Kathleen Karate's departure from the rat czar role in the fall of 2025 left the program without one of its most publicly visible champions heading into a contested mayoral election, and city officials have since emphasized personal responsibility alongside continued infrastructure investment, a shift in messaging that reflects the ongoing challenge of sustaining an expensive, multi-year public works effort across changes in political leadership. One unexpected side effect of the city's persistent rat population made headlines of its own in 2026, offering a small, memorable illustration of just how deeply the animals had embedded themselves into daily city life, even as the containerization program advanced. A Manhattan resident reported paying nearly $1,000 to repair her car after discovering rats had chewed through the vehicle's wiring, an increasingly common and expensive form of property damage attributed to the city's rodent population, and a small but vivid reminder of exactly why officials had invested so heavily in a strategy aimed at shrinking that population's food supply, rather than simply tolerating its presence as an unavoidable cost of city living. If you enjoy real, verified stories from the wild edges of nature, like this video, leave a comment letting me know what you thought and subscribe for more. I will see you in the next one.